Greetings, theists and non-theists. I'm the Atheist Paladin. And I'm going to be making a video to Jsloan777. And this is going to be the last time I do it, because the way this guy comes off, I find him extremely dishonest and disingenuous. And I don't want to put y'all through that, going back and forth, because I'm pretty sure this guy could go on forever. He doesn't really care. He'll probably enjoy the attention that I would give him. So I'm going to let this be my last reply to him. And he actually replied to not only my video on Nietzsche and atheism, but he also did a video that I did a while back on Jesus the Suffering Servant, as regards to Isaiah 53. Of course, I didn't know he made these videos until he made a comment on one of mine, and that's when I checked. And one of the things that I've noticed about his reply is the way he does it is pretty standard. And what I mean by that is that when he replied to the open-air atheist, he went to his backlog of videos and tried to find an image of what was least flattering for open-air atheist, and that's what he used. And he did the same with me. He went to a video that was nearly 2 years old and has a picture of me with my when I didn't make my bed before videos. And that's what he did with me. So I find that the style of what he's doing, just doing that alone, I find that very disingenuous, that he's already trying to paint the picture in a certain way. And yes, I did call the man ignorant, but when you suggest that Hitler was an atheist, or that the Nazi regime was influenced by evolution or Darwinian policies, or that you suggest that there's a connection between Nietzsche and Nazism, or that that all these deaths, what they call these atheistic regimes, can only be accounted solely towards atheism. All these things he pretty much agreed with, and so that's why I made that video. It wasn't just a reply to him, but into this bull jive that I keep hearing over and over again, and I get tired of hearing it. That, you know, Pol Pot, Stalin, Mao, they're all atheists, therefore, you know, atheism is bad sort of argument, and so I had to get it sort of out of my system. And then he makes a certain claims that, well, if I can show the Atheist Paladin is being wrong on these claims, and therefore I don't have to really address the rest of his bull jive. To me, it really strikes of cowardice. If you don't want to reply to everything that I have, then just go ahead and say it. But don't act like the few things that you refute is somehow going to destroy the rest of my video. If something that you reply to is foundational to my argument, and you refute it, okay, fine, I understand that. That would be fine. But some of the things that he picks on, and some of the things that he points out, are, to say the least, very weak and quote-mined arguments. So he mostly quote-minds me. He does it out of sync. So he's, you know, at one point in my video, then he goes back, then he goes forward and back, and I had even trouble following to what the heck he was actually replying to. So if I, the creator of my video, had trouble following the video, you know, what kind of light does that shed on his? But a lot of this is not going to make sense, because I'm going to go through my notes that I made on the video. And so if you haven't watched that original video and then his and mine, a lot of this is not going to make sense. So I encourage you to go back, go through it, and watch it yourselves. But if you're really not interested in this, I'm just going to go ahead and continue. The reason that I pointed out that Lenin couldn't get into power because of the church is to basically underscore the reason why the church shouldn't get into basically politics, because it has a basically comes back and burns you, whether it's your. And this was a theme throughout history, and it's just a point that I wanted to make. It's not really important that this be contended at all to me. Then he goes on and to say, he sort of mocks the idea that somehow I'm suggesting that these atrocities actually did happen in the name of atheism, and that wasn't the way I was going to. A lot of Christians do make that claim that it did happen in the name of atheism, or at least it could be accounted to atheism, which in some cases I point out later that isn't always the case. Then he goes on to, well, Hitler really had to be an atheist because he reads Schopenhauer. The world as will and idea has nothing to do with atheism. It only outlines his idea of his philosophy on will and how it affects ontology, ethics, epistemology, and aesthetics. Schopenhauer was a German romanticist, and during the time he was reading that book, you'd figure that it would actually strike a chord with Hitler because he was a painter. So yeah, a painter would actually enjoy reading a German romanticist's book on, aesthetics and will. Why couldn't Hitler be keen on Schopenhauer's philosophy of the will and how it relates to certain things and still be a Christian? I don't understand how you make that connection. There, Hitler reads Schopenhauer, who is an atheist, therefore Hitler's an atheist. I'm sorry, but that kind of logic doesn't follow. And the thing is, I couldn't find the source for this claim, and that he actually read this book. I found it that was claimed often. I found it was claimed often, but I could never really find the source of why do we know that Hitler read this particular book, and I find that kind of dubious, or to say the least. But I also found this. Hitler commenting on Schopenhauer's pessimism. Schopenhauer's pessimism is springingly partly, I think, from his own line of philosophical thought and partly from the subjective feelings and experiences of his own personal life. As Hitler later states, to have pity on the pessimist, for he spoils his own existence. And in fact, it is adorable only in the condition that one's an optimist, that one would have to us soldiers by heaven. If we group with the pessimists, one must have faith in life. And of course there's a lot of ellipses. I'm not sure where that quote comes from either, but I find that kind of interesting. So Hitler doesn't agree with Schopenhauer exactly on everything. That's amazing. And he doesn't like his pessimism, and he talks about faith in heaven. So your whole thing, well, Hitler was an atheist because he's read Schopenhauer, that's strictly absurd, asinine, ridiculous. Okay, on to the claim that Lenin and Stalin. Okay, I made the claim that Lenin and Stalin were insane. Yeah, I wasn't really being clinical with my diagnosis. I was kind of being polemic, but overall, if you're purging the political party quite often, and everyone gets so scared of you that anytime that you have a speech or you do anything, they have to clap endlessly on end, and the first one is so afraid to stop clapping is afraid of being politically purged. I think the label of being insane is kind of merited. That is an extreme level of paranoia, and as I pointed out, that he was extremely resistant to changing farming policies, shows that he was also quite irrational. Doing the same thing but expecting a different result. I think close as you can without being clinical to saying that he was insane. I think I'm warranted in saying so. And then he goes in and quotes some doctor about Hitler's sanity. I never made any claim about Hitler's sanity. So that you're even going into this, I'm going to have to say swing and a miss, because I never pitched that claim, if we're going to use baseball terms here. I never even pitched a claim, and so you're swinging and missing at a claim that I even never even made. Okay, now back to the farming policies. And basically you agree with me that the farming policies never have anything to do with atheism. That was my whole point of bringing that up. Those deaths that happen to that, they can't be really counted towards atheism. That was the whole point of the video, to show that there are some things that the people died for wasn't necessarily towards anti-religious attitudes. And so, in a sense, that I can blame other things other than atheism for these deaths. That was the whole point. So, where you were going with that, I don't know. Then you quote from Nietzsche, which is quite interesting, because nowhere in that quote does it say someone should die. And yet, you keep on referring back to, you know, how Hitler could easily kill people and blah blah blah, and kill Christians and this, all this, and I guess you don't know what it means to be called an anti-Semitic. A claim that you also made towards Nietzsche, that his works were anti-Semitic. They weren't. And if his works were anti-Semitic, you are anti-people, at least as far as if you're a Jew. That's what it means to be anti-Semitic. So, as you try to play this off, no, you're going to have to own up to your words, just like I am owning up to my words. And I will later on. Which I'll do right now. You're right that the Hitler Youth, you gave a full quote of it, and yeah, that is very Christian. But choose going to from that anti-Christian quote to atheism, Hitler's atheism, is still not justified. I'll speak more on that later. And then you say somebody can kill someone in the name of atheism if they were a fundamental atheist. No such thing. There's no such thing as a fundamental atheist, for several reasons. One, if somebody asks you the question, is there a God believe in, and you say no, congratulations, you're an atheism. You're an atheist. The problem is that that's the only thing. And so to say fundamental atheist doesn't really make no sense. And yet the thing you're trying to imply is anti-religious attitudes. Well, that's never even anything about atheism. Okay, when you're applying anti-theistic attitudes, that is something entirely beyond what atheism doesn't even go to. All you have to do is not believe in a God. But when you go as far as start killing people because they believe in a religion, that's another step. That is something that is positive. And that is in no way connected to atheism. You can be an atheist and follow it fundamentally, whatever the fuck that means, which has no meaning whatsoever. You won't kill anybody. You have to be an anti-theist. Do I deny that there were anti-theistic policies in these regimes? Of course not. No, that's not the point. That wasn't the point of the video. And then you want to pretend that somehow believing in God makes you less capable of killing people. You know, that these people can only kill people because they disregarded God and therefore disregarded consciousness. No, a conscience. No, it's very easy to kill in the name of God if you think God ordered you to do so. History is filled with examples of that. Do I need to go through the entire medieval history to elucidate this point? I don't think so. So really somebody killing, the whole point is somebody's killing in the name of, be it anti-religious attitudes and for religious reasons. Both are equally bad in my sight. And then you want to go from we are not special by quotes from evolutionists saying that we're not special in the whole grand scheme of things, which is true, but you want to tie that in into Peter Singer's infanticide, and you as well quote mine Dawkins. basically quote mine Peter Singer and Dawkins as somehow the Darwinian belief that we're not special in the whole grand scheme of things somehow leads to infanticide, I guess, which was your point. That, you know, you can be murderous and kill in Darwinian evolution. Well, for one thing, no, that's the is-ought fallacy. So even if that was true, that would be, or not, naturalistic fallacy. Pardon me. I don't know why I'm having trouble. But that's the naturalistic fallacy, saying that, well, this is the way it is in nature, as in Darwinian nature, and then therefore we ought to, you know, killing people's not really that bad. You can't get from A to B. And Peter Singer's views on infanticide, as you pretty much ignore the context, and I'm pretty sure you'll probably cut this out and not respond to it. But I really don't care. I really don't care if you respond or not. You're so beneath me at this point. But it's in regards to a basically disabled or handicapped baby. If they're disabled and handicapped, and the parents do not believe that they could raise this child and have a good life, then he thinks they should have the right to end the life of the child if they so choose. And that's what Dawkins agrees to. He actually agrees to that. He doesn't find a problem of terminating the life of somebody who's handicapped, because he views such a thing as actually merciful. I'm not sure that I actually agree with that. I think that should have been done before the baby was viable. But to terminate something that it's always conscious, I have a lot of problems with. But that's where it comes. That's the whole thing. You didn't share a link, didn't show where you got this. So you, as far as quote mining this, is what made it very obvious. The fact that you don't even cite anywhere where you get this stuff. Not even in the information box, I find it very telling. Then you, for some reason, go on to Dawkins saying that in a Darwinian political system, then that it would be a fascist state. I don't know why you go to this point. I don't know why you go to that at all. But again, that's essentially the naturalistic fallacy all over again. And then you want to state that Christians cannot truly hate the Jews, which is fine theologically. But let's go ahead and read the Bible and see where this comes from. Luke 23. Well, yeah, Luke chapter 23. And start at verse 20. Pilate, therefore, wishing to release Jesus, again called out to them. But they shouted, saying, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Who are this? The Jews. He says, okay, we should scourge him and let him go. But they were insistent of wanting him to be crucified, so Pilate had no other reason but to accept. Of course, that's historically wrong. Pilate loved getting under the nerves of the Jews, so if he knew that riled him up, he'd probably release Jesus. But, digressing from my historical point on Pilate, that's where that sort of thing comes from. Whether it be theologically correct, it really doesn't matter. Throughout history, we have Martin Luther, who wrote the book Jews and Their Lies, where he actually expressed many sentiments of wanting to pretty much do genocide against the Jews. The Catholic Church has a great history of putting Jews in ghettos and not allowing them to farm or own anything. This is why they're mostly bankers today, because they couldn't own anything except be bankers. And now people getting all conspiracy theory. Oh, they're bankers of the world. Done made it a family trait now. To say so, well, this is to basically ignore the rich Christian history of anti-Semitic hate is to bury your head in the sands. It is a sad thing, and a thing that should never happen, but it did. Okay, to Russification. Yes, of course, it was mainly about enforcing the Russian language upon everybody else. But everything I still said is still true. There were some instances that they did enforce the Russian Orthodox Church. And yes, they were closing many Orthodox churches down, which is, to me, is kind of ironic. So they pretty much hate religion, but in some instances, if it benefited them, they enforced religion. I just found that interesting. Ah, and yes, then you failed to even quote mine me, trying to make it look like that I said that Hitler read Kaufman. Or even the Kaufman book was even available to Hitler. Oh God, it's stupid, it burns. But I could very clearly state, even in the part that you quote mine from me, that if you read Kaufman, if you, that's right, you, J. Sloan, read Kaufman, you would see exactly how the how Nietzsche's philosophy came associated with the Nazi philosophy. And tell the truth, it's not really Nietzsche's philosophy, because his sister and others perverted it. It's not his works. So were you going, well, if Hitler read Nietzsche's philosophy and that's what he thought and that's what counts, that's a load of bullshit. Really, or we're going to get into that sort of BS? No. Nietzsche has nothing to do with the Nazis, through no fault of his own. And as all the books that you failed also to quote me, he makes it very clear that he's not anti-Semitic, that he doesn't want anybody to be killed by in the name of his philosophy, and that while he's, though, very virulent against Christianity, he's not anti-Christian. Not in the same sense that what anti-Semitic means. But yes, he is against Christianity, if you would say so. I mean, he did write a book called Der Christ, which means the Antichrist. Then you fail to address Hitler's quote, creationist quote. Something I brought up, and you didn't even mention in passing. You brushed it off. Oh, it's so obvious that Hitler was an atheist. No. Again, you failed to address the quote that I brought up in Mein Kampf myself, and where he says things that no Darwinist would ever say. Hell, not even a Lamarckianist would ever say. So, you're just simply ignoring that and saying, oh, it's ridiculous that he was a creationist. Again, Origin of the Species on the banned books list of the Nazi regime. Again, you never addressed that point. See, this is why you are a coward, because some of the points that I make would still pretty much demolish everything you claimed. And then, this is why you're a moron. You want to say that it's asinine, that for me to deny a connection between communism and atheism is asinine. That's why you are a moron. I can, and very easily can deny that, and be rightful in doing so. Because atheism in itself does not lead to any political system or political policy. And so when I deny that, that's what I'm denying. There is no logical flow from atheism towards communism. That's what I was stating. I'm not denying that there were anti-theistic policies in those communist nations. Of course, there were plenty of anti-theistic policies and anti-religious attitudes there. I'll grant that. But that wasn't what I was saying. And you seem to be, nevertheless, intentionally misrepresenting that. Another thing that I have to admit to, open mouth and insert foot. As well, I say that survival of the fittest is something that Darwin never said. Obviously that I was being very polemic, and so rightfully so that I should eat my words. See, Sloan? See, Sloan, I can be humble and admit where I'm wrong. But only when I'm wrong. But the things that what I should have done then is still show that the idea of survival of the fittest is still a misunderstanding of natural selection. And at that time I did know that there were several studies that showed this. Survival of the fittest is still a misunderstanding of evolution. Regardless of the fact that in chapter 4 it's survival of the fittest, it wasn't in his first book. It was just natural selection. It was actually, the term survival of the fittest was actually coined by Herbert Spencer, who was not a biologist. But even Darwin himself still had reservations about the words, and it still promotes a wrong idea of what evolution is. And that's what I should have addressed. And so in doing so, I think I still demonstrated that eugenics, as in my previous video, is still not part of evolution. So take that to the bank. So even when I'm wrong, my main overarching point is still right. And finally, infidel mentors. I just have to laugh at that, as if I didn't study. I made a few errors here and there, but as if I didn't study and come to these conclusions on my own opinions, on my own thoughts, as if atheists are incapable of having their own thoughts. That there's some sort of secret society, controlling us atheists. That's the way you make it sound. Not that you said that, but okay, I'm done. And I'm not replying to your BS anymore. If you're going to quote from me and can't even get it right and make it sound like I said one thing, and even though I clearly meant another, I'm going to have to banish you for basically being a dishonest prick. I'm not going to deal with you if that's the way you're going to be.